Welcome again. We are back live streaming. I'm Kelly Vanderbeek and we're here in Penrith, Australia, and we are joined by world champion and legend in the sport of canoe kayak, David Ford, also my husband, so I'm a little bit biased here, but welcome David Ford. Thank you for joining us. We're going to just go through some questions, and first off, you're in Penrith. How much do you enjoy this venue for training?
Well, coming from Canada, where right now it's pretty cold, it's nice to have a venue like this to come every year. I've been coming since '99, and it's one of those things where you can kind of build your program around the training, because you know you're going to get a very high level of both physical training but also the technical aspect. You know, you spoke to Peter Kauser earlier, having Danielle Momenti, Peter Kauser, and many others that you can go out with every day and do some training, spar a little bit, see where you are, learn a lot. I think it's pretty key to start sort of the year off with that kind of availability of great training.
For a lot of the people around the world who aren't here in Australia, how does it work as far as training with other athletes? Like, what is the interaction between countries? I'm sure a lot of people are interested in how that works for you versus some of the younger athletes coming up.
Yeah, our sport, I think historically, we've been really lucky that we can sort of come to a venue like this. You book in for your 1 hour session, and if say Peter Kauser or someone else is in that session, there are opportunities where you're both doing the same thing. So you pair up because you have an opportunity. You know, he might learn something from me, I'll certainly learn a lot from him, and it keeps it fresh. And I think as we move forward with only one Olympic spot, a lot of the teams don't really want to work together as much because you're kind of afraid of losing that one Olympic spot. So I think a lot of the international competitors work together a little bit more now, just because it feels a little bit safer working with someone from another country, which is a shame.
It is a shame, but I mean, for yourself, David Ford, obviously, you know, you can give us a bit of a history, but when did you start in this sport? And can you give us sort of a quick summary of where you began, where you've gone, and where you feel like you're headed?
Sure. Well, I started a long time ago. I probably started paddling when I was 8 years old, but kind of fell into racing by accident when I was 13, and really kind of loved the aspect of the extreme nature of kayaking, but also that sort of mainstream sport of having a time from top to bottom and having to do the gates and that kind of thing, and it kind of hooked me in. But man, I've seen a lot of changes in the sport in my career. We used to have reverse gates. When I first started, there were 10-second penalties. My first world championships in Augsburg, the winning time for one run was 210 seconds. When I got a silver medal in Augsburg in 2003, my two-run combined time was 198. So for two runs, I was 12 seconds faster.
So it's kind of gone from a marathon to a sprint, essentially.
It really has, which I think has made the sport more exciting. It's more easy to package for television. It's a lot faster for someone to watch a run and get it done. And I think the excitement of the tighter course is a lot better for the spectator as well.
Mm-hmm. So also through your career, you started a long time ago. You've seen a huge change in development through the sport. And sort of what was the peak in your career when you look back?
Well, I'm kind of hoping my peak maybe isn't over. I'd love to get to London and have a great result there. But for me, certainly winning the World Championships, when I was 14, 15 years old in Canada, people were pretty convinced that a Canadian could never be world champion. It was just a sport that wasn't that accessible to us. We couldn't do it. And so to have achieved that was pretty special. And in 2003, I think winning the overall World Cup and being second at the World Championships, to be named Canadian Male Athlete of the Year was something I certainly didn't envision when I started, and to have done that was definitely a high point for me in my career, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And now looking forward, as we look, we're a year and a half out from the London Games, you now have 5 Olympics under your belt, so this would be your 6th Olympics. How do you feel preparing for those Olympics? How do you feel, and keep it exciting and unique and stuff? I mean, for most athletes, they're lucky and they're excited to ever get to go to one. Yeah. And so you've been able to maintain a level and a standard of performance that is so high. And I'm sure everybody out there is going, what's the magic bullet? What's the secret? Yeah. And how do you keep it fresh?
Yeah, well, keeping it fresh, I think, is the secret. That is the magic in it, is you've got to tap into your passion for something. And I love this sport. I've actually always loved the training. So working hard is not difficult for me. But, you know, part of it is coming here every year and getting to work with the top boats like Peter Kauser, Fabien Lefebvre, Daniel Momenti. Those guys are sort of reinventing the sport every year. They're finding a new way to go faster. And for me, learning how to kind of put that into my bag of tricks and try and get to where they are every year is kind of what keeps you coming back. And I think looking ahead to London, it's like 6 Olympics. Hopefully that experience will count for something on the start line. You know, they've raised the level so far that I feel like I'm trying to catch up. and that's exciting. It's fun. It's sort of that idea of human potential. What can I do? That's what keeps me coming back every year. I think if it was the same every year, you'd stop, because you'd want new challenges. You'd want to find new ways to excel at maybe something new. So it's pretty exciting, the sport.
It's also a very dynamic sport. I mean, when people think of perhaps, and again, you don't want to ever knock another sport because of the same idea of pushing human potential. But, you know, if you're looking at the bottom of a pool for 20 years straight, or if you're running a straight 100 meters for 20 years straight, talk about the dynamic aspect of this sport and why that is that it's kept you in, and also why it's so exciting for the public to watch.
Well, and I heard you mention with Peter Kauser, actually, that ours is sort of one of the extreme sports of the Summer Olympic program, and I think that's true, and it's what's kept my heart in it for so long. Is you get out on the river, whether it be in slalom gates or for fun on a creek, it's that feeling of dancing or being in concert with the river that really brings you back. And you are competing against other people, but at the same time, you've got a foe out there in the river, and they're building us new stadium courses all the time, especially for the Olympic Games. And so you're learning that extreme aspect of sport. At the same time, you're trying to be just worrying about millimeters and fractions of a second, and that's pretty hard and very exciting.
You spoke a little bit about Fabian and Momenti and Kauser really reinventing the sport and always elevating the game. When you look back, what are some other athletes key athletes along your career that you say have changed the sport, elevated the game, and just looking back and giving us sort of a sense of the progression?
Well, certainly when I came in, Richard Fox was doing things in our sport that we'd never seen, winning, I think, 5 world championships almost in a row. And
Richard Fox represented Australia, so Britain, but he's in Australia now, correct? Yeah, so he's down here now.
Yeah, so, you know, the British program was so strong then, and that's actually what I did, was go to England to learn the craft, see what being a world champion was all about. But really every few years, someone figures out a way to just tap into something that makes them a lot faster, and that changes the sport, because everyone's got to learn that, catch up, refine it, and then get better at something to go faster again. And so it's been really cool to see how people sort of take a different take on the same thing and make it faster and make it their own, and then everyone else kind of catches up or reinvents something else. And it's that dynamic nature. When you watch a race, the top 5 guys will have 5 different paths down the river, and yet they're all within a very small fraction of a second, and that's pretty exciting sport when you have that much dynamic action going on, and yet people are so fast at it.
To some of the youth who are looking to you, looking to all these athletes, and looking to do that same thing, sort of develop their craft and to hopefully reach the level you and Peter Kauser have reached, what kind of advice would you give them for along that journey?
Well, I think being really open-minded. I think you need to be willing to fail to succeed, and that you hear that from Michael Jordan, the famous basketball player. You hear that in our sport. You've got to be able to get out there and get out of your comfort zone and learn to make yourself faster. And I think having a good work ethic and training with purpose for a long period of time is necessary in our sport, with so many variables, to get good enough to be able to execute them when it really counts. And so have fun, explore your passion for the sport, because that's where winning is going to come from.
Again, now we'll just sort of return here to Australia, here in Penrith. Do you see much youth here? And then also when they're looking at what kind of body type they want to develop in order to become like you and Peter, there's a lot of different body types and different paddling styles as well. When you compare Fabian, who's so much feel and touch, and then, you know, Momenti, who could be argued is such a bull in a china shop, the way he paddles. How would you describe the styles and the different body types?
I think we're very fortunate that our sport doesn't require a body type. You know, like certainly I couldn't have been a basketball player, and now you see tennis, where if you're not 6'2", 6'4" with a 200-kilometer-an-hour serve, you're just not going to be successful. Whereas in our sport, I think, you know, there are some advantageous body styles, but not necessarily required, and I think that makes our sport accessible to pretty much anyone that wants to try it. You see Alexander Grimm, who was a gold medalist in Beijing, who's, you know, 90 some odd kilos and a monster, and then you look at Campbell Walsh, who is an Olympic medalist, who is, you know, a little guy. And I think that is an exciting part of our sport, is that anyone that wants to do it can have an Olympic dream. And there aren't a lot of sports out there that allow that.
One of the questions that was not written by me was, I'm an alpine ski racer and his wife. How is it being married to an Olympic athlete, and how has that helped you? Just the dynamic of us, I guess, and just both preparing for sport.
Yeah, well, and it's cool that our sports are so similar. The conversation is so the same in terms of what's necessary to be successful, and I think that really helps both from a relationship standpoint, because you don't have to explain to your partner what you're doing or why you're doing it or why you can't see them for 6 weeks or something like that. But also just having the support when you come home and you're like struggling with something or frustrated by something, the conversation isn't new, that they can understand. And I think you've really helped me kind of center myself around an understanding that I'm not alone, that my problems are not unique, and the perspective that you bring kind of helps me with my perspective, because it's so similar and so on point most of the time.
Well, and Peter Kauser has his girlfriend here as well, and so, I mean, he spoke a little bit about the normalcy that it brings having, you know, the balance, and speak a little bit about the balance that you try and maintain within sport.
Yeah, balance is tough and so key. You know, it's like sport is just sport, and life can be so much harder, and you have to remember that without making sure you have that balance, your perspective gets skewed to where missing a gate becomes so painful, and really it's just a game. And you got to remember that it is just sport, and if you're so frustrated and so narrow focused on it, you can't really have passion for it, because you have no perspective or balance to what that really means to your life. And you know, so having a partner, having a family, having school, having other things involved with your life is just so critical.
This is also very much a lifestyle sport, and that's something that people talk about. Can you describe how this is lifestyle sport for you, and also what that'll mean for you beyond your career and when you look past 2012 and past London?
Yeah, I love paddling, so you know, the river is always going to pull me back, whether it be racing at an Olympic level or going out and ocean kayaking around my home. You know, being in the boat, feeling that glide, that attraction to the water is something that I would be doing whether I was racing or not. It's got me hooked. So this paddle sports is a lifestyle sport for myself, but it's available to anybody at so many levels that it's cool that you can have so much of a family of sport, whether it be ocean kayaking, rafting, whitewater kayaking. There's a lot to do.
And I know, because I'm your wife, what your plans are, but what are your plans as far as career, life, those kinds of things after 2012, or have you even thought about that?
Yeah, you know, London 2012 I think is probably the end point for me. I've been doing it a long time, and what I hope to do is just continue doing what I've been doing, which is working with sponsors, doing some television, maybe raising a little kid.
We'll work on that.
But I think the main key is I want to continue to have a life like I've had, which is something that is filled with passion, that really gets me engaged, and maybe not one thing, so that I have a lot of opportunity to try different things. Just like now I have to keep changing to stay in my sport, I want to keep changing to stay in life.
So now, as we're wrapping up, we're getting towards the end of this interview, let's talk a little bit more about London. Again, 5 Olympics. Everybody's looking towards London. It's exciting. What excites you about the London Olympics?
Well, the Olympics is just something you can't describe unless you've been there. Walking into the opening ceremonies with 100,000 people screaming and being around 10,000 other athletes that have the same dream you do is just, it's incredible. And it really is, especially in Canada, it's the pinnacle of sport. And so to be involved with that is really significant. And having come 4th and 6th of the last 2 Olympics, to be so close, I think it really keeps the fire burning. And I want to go there and sit on the start line knowing I've done everything I can to have a really great performance, and then just see where it shakes out. And that to me excites me, even just sitting here right now talking about it. It's like I'm doing the stuff I need to have a really good start line, and then we'll see what happens.
And that's what's happening here in Australia, here in Penrith. You're preparing for the Olympics, and so just looking ahead to today, what does today look like for you in a day in the life of David Ford?
Well, training, and a little bit more training, and trying to stay out of the sun. It's hot here, but yeah, you know, it's like doing those little things, trying stuff out, testing equipment, testing technique, getting a little competition with the other guys that are here, and then it's just that one step closer to getting what I need done for having that great start line in London.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap up here, so do you have any final messages that you want to send out to the kids, the fans, the people who just follow the sport for the lifestyle aspect of it? What are your thoughts?
Just have fun first, and keep training hard, because there are great rewards that come from a good work ethic.
Very cool. Well, thank you for joining us. Again, we're here in Penrith, Australia, and I'm sure we'll be touching base with all of you again soon. There'll be lots of action coming up here in Australia, but then also beyond that through the whole summer and looking towards 2012.